All right. Hey, good morning. Per the old tradition that we're bringing back in, this is your Monday morning update of just things worth knowing as it relates to kind of the real estate market, or I guess golden retrievers, around the kind of the Portland, Vancouver metro area. So try and do this every week, or usually around every Monday, usually around 10 a.m. So this sort of this week's just kind of looking at sort of what's going on in the news and the media. Or just sort of in the industry in general that's worth knowing, right? So right now, kind of the biggest focus that over the past week I've been seeing is just articles specifically kind of keep coming back to this notion of affordability, right? So whether that's the cost of the housing stock or the cost of financing homes. So first and foremost, we're starting to see some press kind of coming out, which I think is somewhat interesting, of at a national level trying to force through legislation that would somehow improve affordability of housing. In this case, this 21st Century Housing Act, whatever it is. This is specifically related to kind of trying to remove bureaucracy and red tape and some of the oversight processes, which adds on pretty astronomical levels of cost for housing development. So it's a great idea and concept. What I'm waiting to see on this kind of stuff is how that relates now down to sort of your more local levels, right? Things like in the Portland area, metro evaluations, land studies, that kind of fun stuff. The environmental overlays for, like, say, City of Portland, for example. How is that going to be impacted, if at all, to be determined? So how much impact is really going to be had from stuff like this? Not real sure. Other than I think maybe you'll see some improvements as it relates to Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, their kind of their costs, their oversights, their processes. Does it create meaningful savings? Time will tell. I'm skeptical, but that's just how I'm wired on this stuff. But at least that they're trying to make something happen, which I think in the effort is always kind of good news. Um, there's also this thing where kind of builders are pushing what they're calling kind of Trump homes, right? So they're just trying to figure out creative ideas to help affordability, help people get into houses. In this case, it's really just an elaborate rent to own scheme, is all it really is. And basically, they want to allow investors to basically purchase homes, rent them to people, apply the rent towards purchase after a minimum of 3 years. I can hit the pause button for a second, and you can imagine all the problems that are going to come with this kind of an idea. Entrapments, how much is it going to go into it? What are the eviction rights for the home owners? Things of that nature that will create problems. I don't see this one ever getting off the ground, but again, I think any idea is worth discussing, because if nothing else, it can spur other ideas, which maybe create some better ideas, and we can figure out affordability. On the mortgage rate side, rates are kind of holding steady at this point, which is interesting, right? If you watched this video last week, we talked about rates are I'm seeing rates quoted, in the high five kind of a range, even though nationally you see things being pushed around six, six to six and a quarter. We see sort of in the press in terms of published rates, but the reality is I'm seeing lower than that, at least in our local areas. Fed's kind of pausing. The rate cuts are sort of evaluating things. Inflationary news is coming in better than expected. Job losses looks like it's a little bit of a mixed bag. They're up, they're down, they're better, they're worse. So now the Fed's just kind of hitting the pause on things, and the mortgage rate really did not react to them negatively or positively, which is fine. It sort of kind of did what you would think it would do. The Fed said, "Hey, time out." Mortgage rates did the same thing, so that's always kind of a good news push there. The interesting part, though, if you want to look at sort of the mortgage rates, if you're waiting to sort of time the market and what's going on, a couple different articles came out, whether it was on Reuters or whatever the other one's from, I don't remember now. But basically, two different Fed members kind of saying, "Dude, we're going to probably hit the pause button for quite some time, because the latest inflation report came out, and it was lower than everybody expected, right? But it's not necessarily the inflation report the Fed likes to monitor to see what their decisions are going to be, but at least it's a precursor to say whether it's the impact from tariffs or just pricing in general, things are down to a more palatable and acceptable level." So basically, you had two different guys within the Fed saying, if this is where we're at, there's no need for anything. So look for rates probably to hold steady. So this sort of goes back to, again, that chart I showed last week, that showed sort of over historical periods outside of say 5 year gap where we had super low mortgage rates. 6% rate, it's not that bad, right? So it's a pretty good rate. And it may very well be your new normal going forward. So again, if you're looking at time in the market, I think it's time. At this point, I think life takes over, and you was the 5 or 6 Ds of housing, right? So death, divorce, diplomas, diapers, downsizing, and whatever the other one is. And yeah, we got a new real estate cat in the background. So if you watched these videos a couple of years ago, yeah, that one died. So we got a new one. So that's Otis. Anyway, so look for rates probably to hold pretty steady. Um, but that's just going to be sort of your new normal within your local market area. Here's where the interesting piece here. The top one's going to be a little bit tougher to read because the gap's not quite as big. This is lockbox activity both in the Portland area as well as Southwest Washington, so Vancouver, Camas, all that kind of fun stuff. So I've added in the red line just so you can kind of demark, where we've been week to week. So in this case here, 2 week period to 2 week period, down 4.8, down 7.3. Who cares, right? That it's we're this thing's going to move. That part doesn't matter. Where I think the real magic of this chart comes into is where does this relate to this time last year? Are we better? Are we worse? Are we above pace? Right. Let's take sort of that micro seasonality out of things and where are we at. So Portland, if you can kind of see that little gap, we are nominally more active than we were a year ago. Which, if you watched this last week when I talked about the market stats for last month, there's a lot of indicators that said, hey, things look soft, but what's coming, right? So this is just another tea leaf that says activity is picking up despite the rates. Rates did blip for a little bit, but they're back up. But people are coming off the sidelines, right, compared to a year ago. So all signs are continuing to point towards a more active year in the Portland metro area. They go across the river to Southwest Washington, and it's a much more pronounced increase, right? And if you watched this video last week to see their market stats year over year, Washington was way up. So Washington continues to be a pretty hot area. Southwest Washington, at least. I don't track anywhere else because I'm not working up there. But at least Southwest Washington continues to be hot. Activity is up way a good bit year over year in terms of lockbox activity. Which really does just kind of represent buyers that are out there and just sort of a precursor to things to come. So there you go. That's it. 7 minutes. We're getting better at this. That's really what's worth knowing. But if at any point you have questions or other things that you want to talk about or you want me to talk about on here, or hey, I heard about this, heard about that, shoot me a note, shoot me a text, DM me, whatever you want, and happy to always add it on to the agenda for next time. All right. Have a great week. Everybody's probably got the day off today, so hope you're doing something fun. And all right, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.